And welcome to another edition of South Texas Now. This is attorney and nurse practitioner Joe Flores reminding you to join us each and every week right here on KRS. And many thanks to Lopez Broadcasting all these years. With me today, I have a very special guest. He's taken his time to come all the way over here from downtown Corpus Christi all the way to our offices, and none other than Judge Bobby Galvan. Welcome.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here, Judge.
Good to be here.
Usually I start out with somebody's education, training background, the same old, but you have a very unique position in the community, the legal community, as well as just the community in general, but particularly in Hispanic history. Can you tell us a little bit about your mom and dad and your family, how they settled here in the Corpus Christi area?
Well, I have had family that has been in the area for a very long time. In fact, one of my great-great-grandmothers is buried at the cemetery here, the Old Bayview. So we've been in Corpus for a very long time, depending on, which part of my family you talk about. But growing up, I grew up working at the music store, furniture store, King Furniture at the time, and then Galvan Music, which is still in operation. And I grew up working there as long as I can remember.
Yeah, and you came out on television, right? You used to come out in the commercials?
I used to make the commercials for the businesses.
So you've already been on television before, How old were you when you started making those commercials?
Gosh, I don't even know. 10,
Grade
8.
School,
Grade school for sure.
Yeah.
And, of course, we also have the ballroom, the Galvan Ballroom, that's been there for many years. That's a very historic place. Well,
on your a very special birthday of yours, and I brought you a gift. We celebrated over there.
My 50th birthday at the Galvan Ballroom. There have been a lot of things celebrated there.
Yeah, we've had some good times. That was nice, and that was when your daughter was, I guess, in junior high or something.
Yeah,
now she's in college.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, that was
6 years ago.
Yeah. And how's she doing now?
She's doing well. She's
Great.
at St. Mary's. She's going to be a senior this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, she's doing very fantastic.
Well. And you also have your lovely wife, who's also a judge here.
She is judge of County Court at Law number 3. So we do some stuff similar, but, she does probate work, wills and estates and whatnot. I don't do that.
Go Judge Deanne Galvan. Yeah. Okay, so what was the hall like growing up, and were there big bands and stuff like that? Or
the hall, of course, back in the day was the mecca of jazz in the area, big bands when it was opened, and it's remained a place where bands play. The acoustics in there are awesome. Right now, we've got a couple of outfits that are putting on shows, concerts. So a new generation of young people is growing and falling in love with the ballroom. But we also have quinceañeras and weddings, and I have a guy that wants to rent it for a Zumba class. At one time growing up, there was a bingo outfit that every Monday that had bingo there, and it was pretty successful. There's a lot of blues bands still come and play there, and we're still renting it, still there.
That's great. And where did you go to high school?
I went to King High School, Richard King High School here in Corpus Christi. Mm-hmm.
And then after that you studied. What made you get into law?
Well, I don't know. Maybe because I was terrible in math. Right? But no, I was interested in it, and you know how it is. When you find something interesting, it's a lot easier to do.
Yeah. I was a second career guy myself, so I kind of understand that. But I enjoyed reading, and I enjoyed that. Used to, binge watch, not like now with Netflix, but binge watch Law and Order.
Law and Order and L.A. Law before that.
L.A. Law, yeah. So what was your experience like when you got out? What did you do when you got out?
Well, when I got out, I started with my cousins, Bobby and Arnold Gonzalez. They had a firm right down the street. And then I went to the county attorney's office, and I kind of never left public service after that. I was at the county attorney's office for a time, then the DA's office called me, and I said, sure. And so that was interesting, and I was going to go into private practice. And there was this guy, kind of changed the course of my life. He was he had a felon in possession of a firearm case. And I get a call from the U.S. Attorney's office, and they said, "Hey, can you keep this guy in custody? We're gonna take the case federally." So I said, "Sure," and we were going to indict the case if they didn't do it, but they decided to pick it up, and they took it. Okay, I didn't think anything of it. A couple of years pass, and I get a call from the U.S. Attorney's office to apply. So I applied, which wouldn't have ever happened if that case hadn't been landed in where I was assigned as a prosecutor. So anyway, I applied. I did 8.5 years there, and then I ran for judge after that. But it kind of took me in a different direction, and now I've done about close to 30 years in public service as a result. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I remember when you were campaigning, as we were younger men, we were in our 30s and stuff, and I love politics down here. It's a full contact sport. But I remember you saying that you also were involved in the war on drugs, and at the time, Pablo Escobar and things. What was that like?
Well, mostly what we did at the U.S. Attorney's was drug trafficking cases, later on, alien transporting cases, gun cases, felon in possession of a firearm primarily, and then child pornography. Okay, so a big chunk of what we did was drug related, and I got assigned to the OCDEF, which is the Organized Crime Task Force, and so that was to target large organizations. And towards the end, we were targeting very large organizations in Colombia.
And my recollection is that it was, early to mid-2000s when you stepped down as a U.S. attorney?
I stepped down at the end of 2005.
And how have you seen it kind of change or evolve? Like, you've probably kept the pulse of the planet. You watch mass incarceration.
In terms of drugs?
Well, let's start out with this. Let me pare it down a little bit. What about immigration and what you've seen? Or is it the same? Or have you seen that there's an increase in human trafficking, or the demographics have changed?
I think it's different. I think it's different. It's funny you should say, have you seen things change? Like, for one thing, like in the drug world, I mean, we've been through the crack. Since I've been on the scene, we've been through the crack epidemic, then there was ice, then synthetic came along, and now we're in fentanyl. And, each one of them has its own characteristics. But those are things that have happened in my career.
And now with designer drugs, they're, spice and all that, and people moving around one carbon chain, which we didn't have to take biochemistry, 2 years of it, thank goodness, in law school.
Yeah, the legislature a few years made it pretty easy to encompass all of those things in a bill about 2 sessions ago.
In federal, speaking of federal law, the cartels, you've seen the progression from Colombia to Mexico, Sinaloa, becoming the largest cartel, over 60% of distribution. They, from boats leaving Manaus in Brazil to going all the way to West Africa to jumping over to Europe and all the way to Australia. I mean, they become global. I mean,
they become global, but for the most part, our when I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, it was moving. They were moving product from Colombia through either Mexico or one of the Central American countries. A lot of times they would try to move through Central America, and so they wouldn't have to deal with the Mexican cartels, and they would bypass them that way. From Colombia here, it was very difficult to do it in one trip, to bypass it all.
And part of the prosecution, you have to follow the money, right? So, I mean...
the drugs go north, the money goes south.
Correct, but they don't count the money going south and watch it as hard as the drugs and the human trafficking going north, is my understanding.
I mean, human trafficking is a completely different thing. Human trafficking, I've seen that evolve. years ago, human trafficking was more of the, sneaking in. And now what I seem to see is just a lot of people presenting themselves at the border. They weren't presenting themselves at the border. They were, trying to sneak in. And and you still have a lot of that, don't get me wrong.
But how it's evolved and changed, in my perspective as a person that's been practicing in federal court a decade and a half, is now these people are being forced in certain circumstances to be mules. And part of their passage is to bring in drugs and stuff. So from the perspective of the clients, which without waiving privilege, with the perspective of clients, I've heard that before, that they were under pressure to do that. But that might be...
I think in some cases that's true, and I think in some cases that's not true. I think it's just what they say.
Yeah. Okay. And we've got about a minute left on our break, but I remember you telling me one thing about federal court. And they say if the person's going to cooperate, you either tell all the truth or say nothing.
Well, that's it. You don't. If you're a federal defendant, you either want to get on one side or the other. This business will get you nowhere.
Well, we're going to take a brief break. You're watching Judge Bobby Galvan, 94th District Court here in Nueces County. And big shout out to everybody out there and our sponsors, Vasquez Flores Home Health, 361-881-9922. And we'll be back after these brief messages. Thank you.